So now we get to the real fun part. Everybody, I assume, had a great session during the concurrent sessions. Was it okay? Yeah. Good. I heard the Arbinger session was a smash. But all the sessions were great. Looking forward to talking with all of you about it. Again, my name is Bill Valdez. I'm the president of the Senior Executive Association, and welcome back for our ceremony recognizing the 2016 and 2017 Meritorious Presidential Rank Award winners. For those who won the award this year and are in attendance, would you please stand up? So when I read through their accomplishments, one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again was, I couldn't have done this without my staff, and I couldn't have done this alone. And so I think that's just a recognition of the power of career leadership and the power of the ability of these women and men to be able to lead such complex and important programs on behalf of the federal taxpayer. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Joan Mellinson, who is a senior, actually, what is your title, Joan? She's the director of program something, and for long-term care and benefits. And if you don't know what long-term care is, it's the program that all of us as we get older are going to be very interested in. And benefits, since we're in the middle of benefits season, is an important part of her portfolio. I just finished my switch from one dental plan to another, and it was easy. It's really easy. Good job, Joan. Anyway, Joan is going to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you very much, Bill. And yes, I wish I could take credit for doing all of that myself to make it so easy, but it is easy. We have great websites both for the long-term care insurance program and benefits. So I'm very pleased to introduce the Honorable Elaine Duke. Confirmed as Deputy Secretary in 2017, she is tasked with supporting the newly appointed Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to safeguard our homeland and the American people. Prior to her appointment, Deputy Secretary Duke was the principal of Elaine Duke and Associated, where she provided acquisition and business consulting services to large and small businesses. An accomplished leader and civil servant for most of her career, Deputy Secretary Duke has served the federal government for nearly 3 decades. Most recently as the department's Undersecretary for Management, where she was responsible for the department's management functions and corresponding $47 billion budget. That's a lot of money. Please join me in welcoming past Presidential Rank Award winner, Deputy Secretary Duke, to the stage.
Well, it looks like you have lunch in front of you, so I suggest you multitask because I don't think you have any other chance today to have lunch. But it's a pleasure to be here. I can remember when I got that call from OPM that my SCS quals were approved. That was probably even more exciting than getting the Presidential Rank Award. But I know it's an exciting time, and it's really an absolute thrill to be here with you today. I started my career right out of college as a GS7 back in the old PACE days. That kind of dates me. I took the job because it was a job right out of college. I didn't plan to stay in civil service, but probably like most of you, I fell in love with government service. I fell in love with the chance to do a wide variety of things, work through many agencies within the federal government, and be able to build my career. Then I retired in 2010 and came back recently to come back to federal service. And what brought me back from the private sector and retirement was really the passion of the people of Department of Homeland Security and across government. There is no other place to work like the federal government where we can work the missions we have with the people we have. And it's so exciting to be back and part of this again. And I know working for the federal government is not always easy. We're often the late night show butt of jokes, or the politicians blaming us for things that they probably should have done and haven't done. And every jokester that comes to a holiday party, we hear about bumbling bureaucrats and waste of taxpayer dollars, or good enough for government work. But really, the joke's on them. I did not know this till I actually got this speech yesterday, but it turns out that the phrase good enough for government work was created during World War II to signify that a product meant the highest standards and could withstand tremendous scrutiny. Well, that's back. And so today's federal workforce and civil service leaders were good enough for government work, and proud to be a part of you all. One recent example of our accomplishments was the 2017 hurricane seasons. I know many of you participated. We had Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Maria. We had disasters in Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And we served their needs federal government-wide with competence and with compassion. I know many of you joined the federal-wide effort for the Surge Capacity Force. We had more than 2,800 federal employees volunteer from outside of DHS to go to those austere conditions and help with the federal response. So if any of you had done that, or anybody on the surge force here today, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank those supervisors that allowed their employees to become a surge force, and I'd like to thank those of you who stayed back and did double duty while one of your coworkers or your employees went on the surge force. I visited each one of those disaster sites multiple times, and the people couldn't have been more amazing and thankful. So those efforts did not go without notice and without value. One of the most humbling moments I had, I was acting secretary for about 5 months, and in one of the visits, right after Harvey in Texas, they had a huge flooding, as you probably know, and so we used a lot of the Coast Guard swimmers that would rescue people from the high waters. And after talking to some of them, one of the Coast Guard swimmers, which is one of the most challenging jobs in the federal government, he gave me the patch off his uniform. And he gave me the patch because he said he wanted to thank me for being there and supporting him. And it was probably the most humbling experience, and I think it's important for each one to think about it each day as we're leaders in our organization. Here's a guy that just individually rescued over 500 people, gave up, left his family, perpetually was being lowered out of airplanes. And here he was giving me the patch to thank me. And I think that's our employees. And I think that's why I think in coming back especially, leadership is what we need to focus on. When we set up the leadership, the SES Corps, we said senior executives are supposed to be fungible, and we set up the qualifications, the executive corps qualifications. In my opinion, we've got a little bit off that. When you look on FedBizOps or look around, many of us in the senior executive service are selected based on technical qualifications again. Or if you look at those jobs, we have the ECQs, but the technical qualifications are what we're focusing on. And I really think that's a mistake. I really think that whether I think of that Coast Guard swimmer or the 250,000 people in DHS that are plugging away day in and out, our job is to be leaders, and the SES Corps has it right. Thank you. One of the things I've done in DHS is kicked off a leadership year. We kicked this off in October, and we're using it to reinforce and build a culture of leadership excellence throughout our department. Leadership Year, we're using it to showcase our leaders of today, to help prepare the leaders of tomorrow, and offer opportunities to employees of all levels of DHS to be leaders. One of our mantras is lead from where you are. Each one of us, even if you're not a supervisor, leads in some capacity or another, delivering a mission to one of our citizens, handling a tourist, doing whatever, but we all lead, and we need to start leading from where we are all the way through the SES. We know our employees are excited about their job, but we have to make sure that we're growing leaders and that we take their expertise, their subject matter experts, and grow it into leadership. This fall, the Senior Executive Association, working with Deloitte, released the State of Leadership Survey. 98% of the 750 respondents agreed that senior leaders' people management skills are as important as their technical expertise. But only 35% said that those leaders are selected on their ability to inspire teams. I would go a step further than the respondents and say that leadership is more important than technical skills when you're in the senior executive service. So the fact that only 35% of the respondents think we're good leaders, and I still call myself an honorary member of the SES Corps. I still have my pin, but even though I'm not in it anymore, I'll still stay we. That's a real area to be concerned about. And I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're taking the time to focus on it. And I'm hoping that those of you here in the audience, especially the awardees, will think about what it means to be a leader and what about our future. So what I think, if you care about your organization, you have to care about leadership. And I think if you didn't care about your organization, you wouldn't be here. You'd be out in the private sector earning a whole lot more money. So this is my recommendation to the federal government as we go forward, is let's get back to basics. The 5 executive core qualifications: leading change, leading people, results-driven, business acumen, and building coalitions. The core qualifications aren't a bingo card. You don't mark them off, join the SES, and then bingo, it's over. We should each be living these core qualifications. And in my opinion, as I've gotten more senior in the hierarchy, is the one that is most important is building coalitions. It really encircles all the rest. You cannot, the more senior you get in your organization, lead people, lead change, deliver results without having coalitions. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is an example of what I mean by that. And that is that the more senior you get, and I know many of you have experienced this, you don't own the totality of your space anymore. You need each other, you need your people, and you need other federal agencies to help execute your mission. At the very last days of my last stint in government, it was the beginning of the Obama administration, and we had H1N1 that we thought was going to be an epidemic confronting us. And I was the Undersecretary for Management at Homeland Security at that point. It was a tenuous position because I had just converted from career to political, and now I was a holdover all of a sudden. What we had is we had an H1N1 situation, and if you think of a lot of DHS's missions, Customs and Border Protection, TSA, FEMA, we are out with people. So some of our employees asked to wear masks. PPE, personal protective equipment. When you think of the veracity of H1N1, that virus, or anything else, it seems like it would be an easy question, right? Sure, wear PPE, put a mask on. Well, it isn't. And many of the decisions we face, and you'll face as you get more and more senior, become complicated. What's the complication here? One, does the mask help against PPE? Help against H1N1? And if it doesn't, are you falsely giving security to your employees? So what do you have to do for that? You have to go to CDC and get a medical decision, at which time CDC didn't know. They said, we don't know if a mask, but we think that this respirator that looks like a mask, but is a respirator, would help. Then we go to another part. What do you have to do if you're going to let your employees have a respirator? You need to train them to use a respirator appropriately. Do we have the ability to train them? Another thing, we were on the verge of a recession then, if you remember, in the spring of 2010. What if people stop traveling because they see at our borders and at our airports masks, so people stop coming here or traveling? What if that, which the economic security advisor at that time thought drives us into depression? Is the wearing of a mask as important as economic security? Which one of those is more important? And what if the mask doesn't even really help, and we let them wear them, and we drive our country into depression from a recession? What does that mean? And then there's the issue of the collective bargaining agreements. Is it a piece of uniform, or is it a not? And do you have to negotiate the wearing of masks with the collective bargaining agreements? In some, you do. So this is just an example of something that immediately you would think, sure, wear a mask. But such a simple decision, and I know many of you experience it, requires that building coalitions. And that doesn't come about easily. It comes about through work, through continual reach out, and through executing those ECQs of leading people, leading change, the business acumen, and the building coalitions. So I say for you as leaders, you have got to stop and pause and make sure you're looking at what those are, and that's what your priority is every day. We can get sucked so easy into the technical piece, into just getting the job done, into getting folders out, correspondence out, but you are selected and you're paid to be a leader. And so I encourage you to start making sure that you're number one, if you haven't already, to start building the next generation of leaders from the very new entrants on up. And I think that's when we'll be seeing the results across the federal government. I'd like to leave you with one final thought on a positive note. As I was in my granddaughter's classroom a couple months ago, and I caught this how they do the acronym, I can't think what it's called, but it said think. And they say everything that you need to know you learned in kindergarten. And this is one where it really hit home so much that I took a picture of it. And people try to make leadership all complicated and hard, and you can read lots and lots and lots of big, thick books on it. In fact, you can look really cool on the train or the plane if you have one of them open. But I think that a lot of leadership to me and what I've learned and what I've experienced and the people that I remote months goes to what I saw in my granddaughter's classroom. And that was how they spelled out think. It was written in capital letters, and it was an acronym for true, helpful, important, necessary, and kind. So before you speak, you should ask yourself, is what I have to say true? Is it helpful? Is it important? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I think those are wise words. They're not as thick as a book, but I think that's leadership. And I'm, again, proud to be here with you. And we'll let you get back to your lunch unless there's any questions for me.
Sam, just one second. Well, thank you so much, Deputy Secretary Duke. And I think, as the power vested in me as president of the Senior Executives Association, I can offer you an honorary lifetime membership in the Senior Executives Association if you would be willing to accept it. And I'm a grandfather as well, 2 grandchildren, and wisdom does come from babes. And so I think your think phrase is fabulous, and I hope everybody in this room will incorporate that into their leadership style. Again, thank you, Deputy Secretary Duke, and please enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.